This Israeli-Palestinian conflict is probably the most complex and challenging conflict to resolve worldwide. It has been raging for 100 years, with nearly every major power attempting to crack the code of how to solve this conflict. From the British to every American president, as well as the United Nations, Soviet Union, European Union, and many others. And all they have come up with is names. From the two-state solution, one-state solution, Israeli-Palestine conflict, Israeli-Arab conflict, and names. Ultimately, no resolution had been achieved, and this conflict has continued to escalate. All these players and their so-called solutions never addressed the root cause, they only put a band-aid on it. It is impossible to have a one-state solution because it would undermine the Jewish character of Israel, and a two-state solution is not viable either, as it is difficult to reconcile the aspirations of Palestinians for independence with Israel's security needs. And through all of this, the Jewish people have been living for 7 decades in a nightmare, and Israel, which is supposed to be a safe haven for Jews all over the world, have become the most dangerous place for Jews to live in. But to truly understand the why and how this nightmare developed, we must delve into history. Like all geopolitical messes, this one has its roots in the good old 19th century Europe. Empires were dissolving, and nation-states were on rise, especially in Eastern Europe. Austro-Hungarian Ottoman empires ruled over tens of ethnicities that aspired to make their own nation-states. Croats, Serbs, Romanians, Greek, Czechs, you name it. European Jews were an oppressed minority that suffered centuries of oppression and persecution by Christian kingdoms. And in this pressure cooker, the Zionist idea was developed to build their own nation-state as a safe haven for the mistreated Jews. At first, the Zionist movement wasn't very famous among the Jews. Religious Jews were against it, believing that God had commanded the Jews to stay in exile, while liberal Jews preferred to have equal citizenship rights in their respective nations where they were. Liberal Jews feared that such a Jewish state would lead to their forced removal from Europe and ethnic cleansing them into that state. But World War II proved Zionism right. Even the opposing parties were totally convinced with the necessity for having a refuge for the Jews. The problem was, where can that state be? Unlike other European ethnicities, Jews were scattered all over Europe, with no single spot where they form a majority and can claim. Back to the drawing table, the Jewish had to select a piece of land to be their home state, not based on the Jewish majority but based on rational criteria. 3 criteria seems to be the most rational in my opinion. First, for this new state, the land ought to be safe with lots of natural borders, which makes it easy to defend. The entire global Jewish population is limited. So, a good defendable land is critical to allow a small Jewish army to defend larger size invasions. Second, the land has to be rich in natural resources so that the Jewish state can prosper and be habitable. That criteria made the Zionist movement reject the proposal of establishing the Jewish state in frozen wastelands like Siberian and Alaskan frozen deserts. Third, and finally, the Jewish state needs good neighbors who sympathize with the Jewish historical suffering and want to have peace and prosperity, rather than focus on war and destructions. Various locations were proposed: Madagascar, Uganda, Palestine, and others. Ultimately, Palestine was chosen to be the place to establish the Jewish state. Now let's apply the criteria to Palestine and see how it attains them. First, natural borders. Palestine is a horrible place to defend, full of flatlands, and with no clear borders to its north or east. That land has been conquered by all sorts of people, from ancient Egyptians, Assyrians, Persians, Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, Turks, Crusaders, and then Turks again, and finally the English. This land, where 3 continents meet, will be taken, lost, and taken again in a never-ending cycle for the next 100 years. Okay, fine. Palestine doesn't have the safest terrain nor location. Let's emphasize its natural resources. Sure, Palestine is no desert like Siberia, but it's not wealthy either. With very limited oil, minerals, and water resources, prosperity in this region is difficult without external financial aid and would need great ingenuity. The last criteria is the neighboring states. Since the establishment of Israel, it has never seen peace. The Jews all over the world are safer than in Israel, between continuous wars with Egyptians, Syrians, and Lebanese, in addition to the ongoing violence from Palestinian terrorist groups. It can be argued that Judea and Samaria are historical lands of the Jews, and the Jewish state can be established except in their ancestral homeland Palestine. This is the most anti-Semitic concept ever. No other people are singled out to live only in a piece of land. We don't tell Turkish people that they can't have a homeland in today's Turkey because they immigrated from Central Asia 1,000 years ago. We don't expect the Anglo-Saxons, Franks, and Lombards to go back to their ancestral homeland Germany, or Arabs to leave Morocco and Tunisia and go to Saudi Arabia. Why are the Jewish people singled out from accessing a proper homeland and getting pushed to an improper one? No ethnicity has a Zionic bond with a piece of land. This anti-Semitic idea of having Palestine as the location of the Jewish state came from the white racists in the 19th century, who thought to ship those goats and money-loving Jews, Shylocks, back to the desert they came from. We all know this perspective about Jews is now altered. So why wasn't any prime real estate in Europe offered to the Jewish people to compensate for the historic injustice they experienced in Europe? USA, the most powerful country in the world, was established by immigrants from Europe. So the concept is well understood and even experienced. But what about Jerusalem? What about it? Israeli leaders were content with a Jewish state that doesn't control Jerusalem. They accepted the 1947 partition plan with no access to the city of Jerusalem and did not fight for it during the 1948 conflict, admitting to a state with the city in the hands of Jordan from 1948 to 1967. In short, to finally deal with this problem, we must take the pill, withstand the pain of amputation, and place Israel in a secure location where its people can have peace and prosperity. After crunching the numbers, I found the perfect real estate which fulfills all the desired criteria: abundant resources, great natural barriers, and a piece of land that barely has been conquered any time in history. Plus, the people are friendly to the Jewish people. Wales in Great Britain is the answer. Think about it for a second. Wales, unlike Palestine, has enormous natural resources with abundance of rain, water, and oil resources. Wales covers 2,000 square kilometers, the same size as the combined area of Israel, West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. Geographically, it's an island with natural barriers and full of mountains, unlike the Palestinians' flatlands. From a national security point of view, Wales has barely been conquered any time in history, and the best part, it is surrounded by good Jewish allies and friends: England, France, and Germany. Compare that to neighboring Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Egypt, total of 465 million human animals. Think about who the Israelis would want to be their neighbors: Hamas and Bin Laden, or Queen Elizabeth. Based on high European support of Israel, it's highly expected that a majority of 3 million wise Welsh won't oppose an Israeli state sharing them the land of Wales. It's a fair compensation of Jewish suffering in the Holocaust. Every opinion poll conducted indicates Welsh support for Zionism in Wales. They'll surely welcome the Jewish immigration. The UK government has been best friend of Israel. Literally, Britain created Israel. So, again, surely, they will find this understandable and welcome such a solution to save Israelis from the barbaric, reactionary, terrorist, anti-Semitic Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims who keep trying to destroy Israel. Most of the 3 million Welsh will leave to neighboring England. The rest will be a minority in a great Jewish state democracy. They will be thankful, unlike the Palestinians. And even if we miscalculated the support for the Jewish state in Wales and the Welsh resisted the Jewish immigration, the United Nations would then intervene in Wales and offer a partition plan that gave Jews half of the land, leaving the Welsh with the other half. The Welsh people, being reasonable, civilized, pragmatic people, will definitely agree to such a settlement. At the end of the day, it's a 50-50. Nothing can be more fair, right? European has long learned the lessons of the Holocaust and wouldn't stand against the only Jewish state. Any complaint about such a solution is pure anti-Semitism and must be censored from the public discourse. Israel has the right to exist and defend itself in Wales, and any terrorist attacks against this small new nation should be squashed by any means necessary. And when the Jewish state in Wales has no other choice but to go into a defensive war, the US, the rest of Europe, and the rest of the world will support and help it to guarantee Israel's victory in its wars. Even if this war leads to the refusal of Welsh refugees to return to Wales, and even if Israel ends up controlling all of Wales, denying the Welsh statehood, it's fine. We all know Wales never had an independent king or a currency to call for statehood. The Jewish state is going to achieve peace at any cost, no matter how many people it has to kill in the process. The Welsh kids might get killed by the most moral army in the world as collateral damage, while chasing terrorist organizations that embed themselves within civilians. But I'm sure they will understand that everything Israel does is for their benefits to free them from terrorism. Their houses might get bombed if there is a terrorist hiding inside of it, under it or beside it. But the most moral army will text them 5 minutes before the bombing to evacuate. They will be so happy about that. They love life, unlike the people of Gaza who love death and destruction. So, let's not stick to simple, stupid solutions that have been tried for the last 100 years and keep failing and failing and failing. For the sake of Jews, Zionism, and the world's peace and love, let's destroy the Jewish state in Palestine and build a better, more stable and secure Israel and Wales. Israel and Wales, Zionism made right.